This episode of Portland Stew's Sorcery Show, I'll be talking about the 13 Gothic cards I've been undervaluing in Gothic Limited. And there's some spicy ones in here and some not so spicy ones. On the bottom here of our little display are the cards I have not been undervaluing that I think a lot of other people have kind of undervalued. And these are cards that have really performed well for me. Things like Enraged Familiar, which is a Persecutor specific card, but in Persecutor, this is almost always a 3 mana minion that ends up being 4 power because you use your Persecutor to attack something or to block something, and then Enraged Familiar becomes 4 power. So there's just a lot of utility, and it's really easy to pick late in the draft. And that's, I think, a theme for many, if not all, of the cards we're going to look at today, is that you can grab them late in drafts. Another great example is these vanilla 3-for-3s. These are often even better than some of the other 3-for-3s with a minor ability because they only have one threshold, so they're so much more reliable to play on turn 3. Slimy Mutants is just such a good card, and it's pretty easy to pick up a Croaking Swamp, which then lets this be a 5 mana, 4 power charge minion, basically. Holy Warrior, just I think one of the best 2-drops. I think it outperforms the other 2-drops by a significant amount. Willing Tribute, obviously, one of my favorite cards, just for sneaking in damage and combat trick, like that it's an on-curve 2-drop when you need it, or it can be a combat trick. The Instigator Imp is just one of those cards that, especially in a water deck where you've got some Mesmer Demons, or if you play some of the other cards you might see in this video, a lot of times you can get the proc on the Instigator Imp even if your opponent's trying to play around it. So those are ones I've already been valuing higher than I think most folks I run into. But these 13 cards, and some of them I've put 2 cards in a category, are ones I've been undervaluing, and I think I may be wrong. So in 13th slot, we've got the Makeshift Barricade. Makeshift Barricade, if one or more allies here would take damage, prevent it. If the damage was 3 or more, Barricade breaks. I still am not convinced on Makeshift Barricade. I have played against it a number of times now. I would still rather have a ghoul in my deck than a Makeshift Barricade in 90% of scenarios. But you can play around it really well. So doing things like only giving your opponent a single attack avenue, uh, and then blocking it with Makeshift Barricade can be really good. It's a great tool for surviving on Death's Door, and it also just pairs really well with with your big threats. I don't know. I just the most frustrating thing I've seen happen with Makeshift Barricade is combining it with warded minions. So like in a savior deck, it just makes everything so complicated. I still think it's one of those things. Like I always find a way to deal with the barricade when my opponent has it, but it takes a lot of computing power to to solve it. So I think Makeshift Barricade, I dismissed it as unplayable, and I think it makes many decks. That one barely made the list. Number 12 on the cards I've been undervaluing is Wiccan Tools. I think I may have never played this in a limited deck yet. Sacrifice. It's 2 mana artifact. You sacrifice Wiccan Tools to draw a spell. This turn, bearer becomes a spellcaster, and their spells require no threshold. So the classic Makeshift Barricade thing is to play it in combination with Pith Imp. The Pith Imp steals a spell, you Wiccan Tools on the Pith Imp, and now you can play the spell you stole from your opponent's hand, regardless of its threshold requirements. And Pith Imp's not a spellcaster, so he can't usually play it. Pith Imp is still, a lot of my local friends have made strong cases for playing Pith Imp, and I think it's playable in many decks. I'm still not sold on it. Just being one power makes it too easy to kill, and you don't control what it steals late game. I don't know. It can do stuff. Like Pith Imp, I think, is one of those random effect things that I can't quite get on board with. But Wiccan tools, I think I am on board with. One, it's just a deck thinner, so especially if you're in a sealed pool that's not very good, or you didn't get in a particularly good draft, this is a great 24th card to sort of thin out your deck. It can help solve a problem here. You know, you play it on your avatar on turn 2 if you don't have a 2 drop, which doesn't feel great, but at least then you can deal with any threshold issues. And it replaces itself. So yeah, deck thinning powers, Wiccan tools, I think more playable than I gave it credit. And the threshold fixing, especially with some of the greedy threshold cards in Gothic, is very non-trivial. Like if you get one of the 3 or even 4 threshold bombs in the format, this can be really helpful. Still a loss of tempo though that I don't love. Now we're hitting the cards that I actually, these first 2 were ones that I think I still won't draft above like 10th pick in a draft at the earliest. Like I'm almost never taking these, but they might make my deck, and definitely in sealed. But this, the Moss Troll, Mostrollerino, the Mossatrollinator. This came up in the recent video cover with conversation that Common Sense did with the Sorcery Con limited champion. Moss Troll is part of a group of 3 power, 3 mana minions, where there's 1 in each color that have these kind of minor abilities that don't do a ton, right? Things like the Mummy, who can re-trigger deserts and is burrowing, or the Night Watchman, who wards his sight, right? And I kind of had them all as sort of equal to these 3 powers. Like their abilities weren't going to differentiate them from, like, do I really want Moss Troll over a horrible hybrid? And my answer was no for a long time. But I think in limited, the significance, and Bobby and I talked about this in our recent limited 102 video on Sorcery 102. You place minions diagonally in limited, you know, put your minion diagonal to their minion so you can choose when they fight. Moss Troll, by being stealthed, like where he starts until he does something, just means that you get full control over when Moss Troll trades, how Moss Troll trades. It's, you know, obviously a Flame Strike can still kill him, but it's, I think, might actually be the most useful of the ordinary 3 mana, 3 power, 1 threshold minions, and I had been undervaluing him. He also is a giant, not a monster, so works with Savior, which is just crazy to get to 4 mana play a warded stealth guy that then just is a liability on the board. So Moss Troll, I've been sleeping on you, buddy, and you're pretty cool. 9th spot. You didn't see this one coming. Broomstick Witch. Now, there's also the, like, this is another cycle. So there's the Flaming Skull is the fire version of this. There's the water one, which has Submerge rather than Airborne. But Broomstick Witch, as an airborne spellcaster that's a 2 drop, is so useful. If we just think about how much we loved Tawny before Gothic came out, for getting to position where we cast our spells from. Like Broomstick Witch, for nothing aside from just being airborne, so it gets to kind of move somewhere without usually being able to be intercepted, and then can cast your Ice Lance or your Flame Strike or whatever it is great. But what makes Broomstick Witch in particular a much higher pick for me is the existence of Kiss of Death. Kiss of Death is incredible premium removal. Just kill any, it's just kill. It's not bury, it's not damage, it's kill. But they have to be here. And so you have to get a minion on top of the thing you're going to kill with Kiss of Death. And it may be cast by spirits and undead, that's fine and dandy, but it also can be cast by spellcasters. And Broomstick Witch, as sort of like Broomstick Witch in so many games, comes out early. You've got a 2-power on the board. You sort of keep her around. She's poking damage here and there when she can. Like, she's not a removal priority. A lot of times people aren't going to burn removal on her. And then you can fly on top of their zombie horde or their Lord of Lies or whatever and cast Kiss of Death off of your Broomstick Witch. It just feels so potent, and I often end up with a Kiss of Death in my air decks, and so I really like having her around for being able to use it. So yeah, Broomstick Witch has come up in my picks for air. Definitely one of my preferred 2-drops, just behind Willing Tribute in many ways. So 13, 11, 10, 9. In position number 8, we have bum, ba-dum, bum, 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 the lethal minions. Noxious Corpse and Plague Rats. These are both cards that make many of my decks, but I don't pick them super high, and I think that's a mistake. Plague Rats combos incredibly well with Savior, so that's always worth noting. And a lot of these, like especially when I'm drafting in Gothic at this point, I am thinking about setting myself up for the high roll, right? So early, say I'm at pick 9 of pack 1. I don't have an avatar. There's a Plague Rat in my pack, and maybe a Noisome Twosome, or some other 2-drop like a Static Servant, right? And up until now, I would have always taken the Static Servant or the Noisome Twosome, because it's a 2-power. It's better than 1-power. 1-power is not that good. But Plague Rat, you can play it early, play it back, and then it just sort of shuts down their aggression onto your front sight. If you open that Savior pack 2 or pack 3, now you've sort of started building your base to be able to use Savior. And it's really great for those mid-range turns when you hit 4 mana and 5 mana to be able to play this sort of extra minion for 1. I almost put the Townsfolk on this list as well because of the value of getting to double spell off of these 1-cost actually good minions. And then Noxious Corpse is similar. It's a 2 for 2, which just makes it a solid playable. But these lethal minions really help a lot late game as answers to big bombs once someone's exhausted all of their removal. So I'm much higher on these now than I was originally. In slot number 8 of our Gothic cards I've been underrated, that I've been underrating, other people maybe already knew, is Wild Fanatic. This is one anyone who's played Savior knows. It's so good in Savior to ward it, attack, and reward it. So nice. But the value of charge is just huge. And I've been picking Ignited over Wild Fanatic. And I had a long discussion about some constructed decks. I was playing someone in a mirror match where I think like literally the one difference between our 2 decks was I was playing Ignited and they were playing Wild Fanatic. Ignited is same cost, but 3 power with charge and dies at the end of turn. And I liked Ignited for being able to just pay 2, kill a 3 power. It's a 1-for-1 trade, but it's good tempo. Wild Fanatic, though, you get to push that 2 damage the turn you play it if they don't have something else out, or they'll block and trade, right? And it just, like, Wild Fanatic wins a surprising number of games, being able to, like, once the game gets a little later, there's been a lot more trading, the board gets complicated, you've whittled them down a little, maybe there's a corner they don't have any minions near, you just play Wild Fanatic and attack for 2, and yeah, like, you could do that with Ignited, get 1 more damage, but with Wild Fanatic, that's 2 damage that will repeat every turn, and I undervalued the threat of this being repeating 2 damage that comes out with charge. So I'm picking Wild Fanatic basically above Ignited now. I mean, not always. Sometimes there are, like, sometimes if I'm low on removal, I might prioritize Ignited higher, but I think Wild Fanatic is just a better staple. And for that same idea of maybe you'll open a Savior later, or maybe you'll be forced to run a Virgin and Prayer. Like, having things that are wardable is pretty handy. I mean, Ignited you can combo with Bone Spear, but there's a lot to discuss there. There's still arguments for both minions, but I was sleeping on Wild Fanatic, except if I got a Savior early, but now I pick Wild Fanatic much higher, even if I don't have a Savior yet. Whew, and now the middle of the pack. Number 7 on the Gothic Undervalued cards, Dreadwing. I don't know what to say about this. I feel like a total dum-dum. I did not like this card out the gate. I felt like taking the 4 damage was a little too much of a sacrifice for a 5 mana for 4 power flyer. Like, that's a good rate, right? We all know 5 mana for 4 power airborne is a very solid minion, but taking 4 damage to play it, oh, that feels like I can't quite afford it. And, like, this isn't lose 4 life, this is strike for 4. So late game, this could be unplayable, is what I'm thinking. I think the big thing I kind of forgot to remind myself every time I saw this card is that you can tap to draw a sight. And by the time you're at 5 mana, like, being at 6 mana means a lot. Being at 7 means something. But, like, there comes a point where you're getting diminishing returns on playing more sights. And so you just tap to draw a sight, discard the sight to play Dreadwing. And then it's, like, obviously a great card, right? So I think that was what I was missing on Dreadwing, that it's pretty easy to avoid the strike just by tapping for a sight. And yeah, it's a great card. I would run it, and the 5 drops are not super easy to come by too, especially in air. So Dreadwing, love it. Now we're on to the top 6 cards I've been undervaluing, and this one I still am unsure about. Pile of Skulls. Once on your turn, you may banish a card from your cemetery to summon a skeleton token here. I ran this in a sealed deck like once or twice and didn't feel great about it when I hit it. But I've had so many players I respect, players who are probably better than me, or at least, we're in the same ballpark, be like, this card is a must play. Like, people talk about pack 1, pick 1ing Pile of Skulls. And maybe because I'm more of a tempo player, I find myself in less really long games. But I think they're all right. I think that even though the turn you play it, it's just 5 mana for a skeleton, it's 5 mana for 1 power every turn from that turn onward. It removes stuff out of cemeteries, which can be surprisingly useful. Things like clearing out their zombie bruiser that they're going to get to recast because they're necromancer or whatever, right? Like this pile of skulls is sort of like turn any deck into a necro deck. There's so much you can do with skeletons. Um, like I just think there's a shocking amount of value to be had from pile of skulls. I still fear to play it because it's so slow, but as you know, if your board state, if you're not already way behind, dropping a pile of skulls when you hit 5 mana is really just gonna slowly drive you into the dominant position in the game, I think. Um, so pile of skulls, number 6. I still need to test it more, but I've definitely been sleeping on it, and I think it's probably good. Though I haven't lost to a pile of skulls yet, to be honest. But I want to play a lot more limited. There's still so much. Like I wish I could play so much more. Number 5 is Desecrate. My baby, my sweet, sweet Desecrate. I love this card so much. An evil ally strikes its site, then may transform it into desecrated ground from your collection. As a tempo player, getting an extra strike out of a minion is a big deal. And then it also becoming a desecrated ground, like turning your opponent's sites into desecrated grounds, is shockingly useful, especially if you sort of take over that site out the gate, right? Um, Desecrate, yeah, the desecrated ground, it just makes evil minions or evil units here have +1 power. So that's real handy. Desecrate combos really well with Willing Tribute. You get these two in your deck. Like I've drafted a really fun draft deck that used this combo a lot. I still try and build this into constructed decks all the time, and um, I don't think it'll ever be an S tier combo, but it is impressive burst damage, a great way to sneak in the door. Um, yeah, and it's the reason why it made this list of cards I was undervaluing is because I wasn't taking it. Like up until maybe a month ago, I basically never took Desecrate. Like Desecrate would, I'd take it as my last pick. Like I would rather, there's maybe my lowest magic spell in air. Like I had to take it above a second wind, maybe, but maybe not even, right? And I think I was really wrong about that. Like it does, you only want to play Desecrate in a deck that you think you are gonna get tempo with, so it's in faster decks, but it really escalates that tempo shockingly. And like, if your ghoul becomes a 4 power where it stands, it's just wild. Like I love you swing in with your ghoul and they've maybe got a 3 power blocker and they decide not to block because they're like, I don't want to trade 1 for 1. And then you desecrate and now they're like, oh shoot, that thing that I could have traded 1 for 1 with is now too big for me to even 1 for 1 it. So yeah, Desecrate. I was sleeping on you, Desecrate. Number 4, Witching Hour and Onslaught. Um, these were similar to Desecrate for me, where I wasn't playing them. I thought, in limited, you want minions and removal and, maybe a couple combat tricks. But when I think about combat tricks, I more think of movement or, like Gift of the Wolf, which cantrips and buffs your minions, but One power is often enough to break parity. I find Witching Hour to be better than Onslaught, but they're very similar in their different elements. I think they're almost always worth running one of these in a deck that can run them. They get especially good if you're playing a more low to the ground deck where you might be playing 2/2 drops on turn 4 instead of a 4 drop, right? Like then these become really tempting. Um, Witching Hour for giving them airborne and +1, like, is often a 2-for-1 card because you have minions that are sort of in their diagonal grid formation to avoid being killed, and then you can all of a sudden attack diagonally, and you've got that extra 1 power that brings you out of parity. Onslaught is just cool because you can combo it with, like, say you have, like, this is a classic turn 5 move for me now, and if you have another minion on board, it's like, boom, my minion on board gets the +1 it needs um, to clear your thing out, or I play the Holy Warrior, and not right, like being able to play a charge warded 3 power plus giving 1 to any other minions that have managed to stick around on the board is great. These cards are still risky. I don't generally play more than 1 in a deck unless I have like Necromancer or a bunch of the sites that generate token. Like, unless I'm doing some sort of tokeny strategy, you don't you'd hate to see 2 of these in your hand. Like, you still need to really prioritize minion and true removal, but they function as sort of backup removal really well. Number 3 on the cards I've been sleeping on is Scatter and Swap. I kind of cheated here. I was really just going to put Scatter, but these Swap, I basically wasn't putting in limited decks. Like, it's obviously busted and constructed. And limited, though, I was like, well, this doesn't remove a minion by its very nature. It doesn't guarantee a kill, but Swap and Scatter are both what I see as like better than Zap. So I was running Zap in many decks before because I thought having that door move is a big deal, and that 1 damage can, do a trade up if you need to, or like, there's a lot of things you can do with Zap, or just break the ward off of something, but mostly it was just to deal the death blow, right? And having that guaranteed kill. A lot of times dealing the death blow is hard, but Swap and Scatter both almost always get you the death blow, and they have utility beyond that, right? Scatter works really well with Instigator Imp, like when you scatter things into Instigator Imp scenarios, right? You can use Scatter to push their avatar forward and their blocker backward so that you can deal the death blow. Same with Swap, you just swap away one of their blockers for one of your attackers, deal the death blow. So I just think these are great as combat tricks that can sort of serve as removal and as death blow dealers. They're a lot like Flame Strike or other sort of classic damage based magics that I would always run, but in elements that don't have as much of that. Number 2 on the cards I've been sleeping on, and this one, I was out cold on this card. I did not think it was good, and I was so wrong. It's Town Priest. You know it. If you're familiar with my content or with me as a player, I am a true believer in Town as a site. And so when I saw Town Priest, I thought, ooh, cool, this is awesome. I'm going to love this card. Um, Obviously, there's some cool constructed combos, but in limited, Town Priest is the tempo you need. Like this is, it comes back to this sort of plague rat discussion too, where having one extra mana is often easy. And being able to say you've hit 4 mana, they've got a 3 power, you've got a 3 power, right? You bounce their 3 power, play another 3 power of your own, swing in for 3 that they can't block now that you bounced their guy, and all of a sudden you're 3 bodies to none on the board, right? And like I used to think Town Priest, they're just gonna replay the minion. Like this isn't even real removal, but tempo being such an important resource in limited makes Town Priest basically premium removal. Like this is better than Be Gone in some ways. Maybe even on a level with Smite, where it's like effectively destroy any evil minion and get a 1 power body to boot. And like, yeah, they can replay that evil minion, but you know what it is now. Like you've gained the tempo. Town Priest is huge. Um, yeah, I'm basically at the point where I think it belongs in almost every deck, which has, I still feel strange saying it. Like in my heart, it feels wrong, but I've just seen it. Like I've died to Town Priest. I've killed with Town Priest. Like I think it is a incredible card in Gothic Limited as a format. And then our final number 1 slot. I'm so embarrassed to be admitting this. I have passed this card in a draft an embarrassingly large number of times, even when I'm in its elements. And I'm an idiot for doing it because it is Murder of Crows. Um, Murder of Crows, deal 1 damage to all enemy minions on the surface, maybe cast from your cemetery, banishing it afterwards. The number 1 reason to play Murder of Crows is that the 2 strongest decks in the limited format right now are Necromancer decks and Savior decks. And this is an answer to both of them. So if you've built 23 cards of a solid, classic, limited deck, you got a good curd, on-rate minions, a little bit of removal, this is your answer to those 2 sort of outlier powerhouses that you might face. And to pile onto that, you can just pay 6 mana to do 2 damage to all of their minions. And this can often lead to blowouts. Like if you have the Necro or any sort of token generation, Murder of Crows can do crazy stuff once you hit that 6 mana and you like chump a bunch of tokens into their 3 powers and 4 powers and then double Murder of Crows, wipe their board, right? Like there's just some crazy stuff you can do with Murder of Crows. And then if you cast it singly just to sweep their tokens, maybe they got out a bunch of skeletons, they played a, raised militia or whatever, an undead ambush. You just cancel everything they did, and you've got it sitting in your bin for a recast when you need it. I just think if you're in air, you want at least 1 Murder of Crows in your deck, maybe 2. Sometimes it's better to stick to 1. Like you can't deal the death blow with it. But yeah, it's in some ways. I mean, Holy Nova is actually the closest thing to Poison Nova we have is Deliverance, which is an elite. Then Holy Nova, which is exceptional. But this is an ordinary that sort of fills that purpose that Poison Nova used to fill, like just as a board wiper. And yeah, I am embarrassed how low I was taking Murder of Crows. I think, like I was picking ghouls above Murder of Crows. I was probably picking willing tributes above Murder of Crows, and that's just wrong. There's tons of minions out there for you to grab. There's only one Murder of Crows. Like the other things that come close to it are Wreathed in Righteousness, Holy Nova, Flame Strike. Like there are other ways to deal some damage to a bunch of things, but this is an ordinary rarity. Just thinking of it as deal 2 damage to all enemy minions for 6 um, should be enough to make it obviously playable, and I'm embarrassed I didn't see it. So there you have it, my top 13 cards that I was undervaluing in Gothic. I'd love to hear if you have things on your list that you were undervaluing. Let me know if I was wrong about any of these or if the order should change. I'm sure there's some other sleepers out there that I have been picking too low. But yeah, hope you enjoyed and keep on contesting that there realm.